So Izzy, you've brought a really nice clip for us to jump into today's topic, right? With the really brilliant actor, Michael Caine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is all about using the difficulty, which is this philosophy for life that he shares. And I think it's really similar to other ideas that you can get from books like The Obstacle is the Way and other Stoic principles. So let's check it out.
And finally, I came across a line which I just wanted you to sort of explain to me. You said that if you did have one philosophy of life, it was use the difficulty.
Yes, use the difficulty.
What does that mean?
Well, I got it from, I was rehearsing a play when I was a very young actor, and I had to come in this scene. It was a stage play. I'm behind the flats, waiting to open the door. There was an improvised scene between a husband and wife going on inside. And then they got carried away and they started throwing things. And he threw a chair and it lodged in the doorway. And I went to open the door and I just got my head round. And I said, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't get in." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "There's a chair there." He said to me, "Use the difficulty." I said, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, if it's a comedy, fall over it. If it's a drama, pick it up and smash it." He said, "Use the difficulty." Now, I took that into my own life. You ask my children. They said, directly, anything bad happens, they go, "We've got to use the difficulty. How can we work? What can we get out of this? You know? Use the difficulty." And so there's never anything so bad that you cannot use that difficulty. If you can use it 0.25% to your advantage, you're ahead. You didn't let it get you down. You know? That's my philosophy. Use the difficulty. Also, the added philosophy is avoid them if you can. At all costs.
Yeah.
Such a nice Cockney accent.
Mm-hmm. Which reminds me, he was sharing, I watched an interview with him where he was talking about his name, Michael Caine, and he was at a party once and people mistook that for my cocaine. So he was so he was greeting people. It's like, yeah, and then they were calling, "Hey, you're Michael Caine." And then I think the host of the party was like, ask him, "Hey, come here." It's like, "What, are you a drug dealer or something? Why are people calling you Mike Cocaine?" So anyway, really,
it's almost like connected speech, right? Michael Caine, Mike Cocaine.
Yeah, with a Cockney accent, it sounds especially similar. It sounds really similar to that. But anyway, Ethan, this I find is just really special.
Yeah, I wanted to first point out that there is some really nice advanced vocabulary in there. Some ones I took note of are like rehearse, lodged, for something to be lodged in somewhere, or to smash something. So just when he was describing about this play that he was in. And if you want to learn all this advanced vocabulary and never forget it, you should definitely check out this episode and hundreds of other ones on the Real Life English app, because you get vocabulary flashcards that use an advanced, innovative technology to help you to never forget these. So you'll have them available to you next time you get into a conversation. But Izzy, there were a couple other expressions that I did want us to talk about because I think it goes to the heart of this and what you were just asking about. He says, use it to your advantage or you can let it get you down. So when something difficult happens, you can use it to your advantage or let it get you down. What do these two expressions mean?
Mm-hmm. So if you use something to your advantage, you're letting it help you. You're seeing it as an opportunity to use it in favor of what you want. And if you let something get you down, you're letting it make you feel frustrated about it. And you're letting it be an obstacle for you instead of using it to your advantage. So these are almost like opposites.
We'll even use down as an emotion. Like if you're feeling down, it just means you're sad, you're depressed, you're in a negative state in general. So that's exactly it, right? To answer your question about what is he getting at here. And both you and I are doing improvisation classes. And that's a really big thing at the heart of acting, at the heart of improv, is that sometimes things don't go as planned and you need to just figure out how to use it. So he gave a great example of a chair. There being a chair there, you weren't expecting that to be there. It's like, okay, you can make this into a comedy by falling over it. You can make it into a drama by getting angry and destroying it. And it's a really nice practice, improv, because I think it has us to adopt also that mindset in our real life. So things are going to happen. They might not be what you're expecting, what you're planning for. And it's like, figure it out, react in the moment, and find a way.
It really depends on the way you see it. Which reminds me, there's a quote that I just love it. I think it's foundational for the real life way, which is our method for learning English and living a better life. That is, the quote is, "The problem is not the problem is your attitude about the problem." So how would you say that that applies to learning English if, say, somebody just doesn't feel motivated to go out there and learn English and use their English? They just don't feel that motivation. How can they use the difficulty there?
Right. And that's misaccredited usually to Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, the reason why I didn't mention who actually said that is like, I don't know. It's unknown. If you look it up, it's unknown.
Yeah, it's like, what does this have to do with someone learning English, right? And it can be applied to anything ultimately. But I was thinking about, okay, what practical situations could an English learner apply this in? One I thought about is, we've even done some videos on this, is many learners talk about that they freeze up when they get into the opportunity to have a conversation, right? And there's all sorts of reasons that this happens. You guys can definitely check out one of those videos, podcasts that we've done if you're wanting to get some direct tips. But I was thinking about, okay, if that happened to you, how could you use the difficulty there of I freeze up? And what I thought about is, you could be like, okay, well, I freeze up. I'm freezing up probably because I'm anxious in those situations. I'm anxious in those situations because maybe I'm not having enough opportunity to be in those situations or to practice. Like, the only way you can get better at something is by practicing it, right? Like, if you're doing a sport, if you're playing soccer, you're not going to go out and play on the field, first of all. Like, you have practices, you're doing different drills, you're doing different exercises, right? And the same goes for speaking another language. So maybe you would come up with a plan for yourself. You could start by talking to yourself. You don't necessarily need to be talking to another person. You can talk about what happened in your day. You can talk to yourself about a series that you just watched or a podcast that you listened to, for example. Maybe you could record yourself, listen back, give yourself feedback. You could practice your speaking even nowadays with ChatGPT. There's like really great artificial intelligence technology, or if you have a teacher, of course. So all of these things would be using that difficulty. You're actually preparing yourself so that when you get in a conversation, you feel confident because you've done the practice. You've built up the confidence. So you know that you can perform in that situation. But if you don't do that, it's like completely normal that you're getting anxious and freezing up in a conversation because you haven't put in the hard work that's necessary first.
I feel like what you're saying is basically using the difficulty as a compass. So it tells you what to focus on. So in this case, if you're feeling anxious about speaking, it tells you that you're not getting enough practice. And I asked you before, let's say you are feeling not motivated. You're not motivated about learning English and just pursuing those practices. What could you do to use the difficulty there as a compass? Just seeing, where does that point to?
We have a big part of the real life way too is start with why, right? So if you're not motivated, I guess like using the difficulty would be asking yourself, okay, why am I not motivated? I feel like for most learners, the case is that you're not motivated because your motivation is actually coming externally, and external motivation is fleeting, meaning that it disappears quite quickly. So at first, if you have a coach yelling at you, if you have a teacher telling you need to, if it's based on grades that you're getting, if it's based on just listening to society that I have to be able to speak English to get a good job, and so on, that might work at first. It might get you to sign up for a class or something like that. But then, when push comes to shove, when it actually comes time to put in the time day after day, week after week, that's going to fade. But intrinsic motivation, meaning motivation that comes from within you, that's immensely powerful, right?
That is interesting because I think all learners who are successful, in my experience as a teacher, I've noticed that they all have, or we all have, I'm a learner too, a strong why behind our actions. So there's another quote that I like a lot that says, a strong why can bear almost any how. And in that quote, there's this verb, bear. What does this mean?
in that case, it's not like the animal bear. If you can bear something, it means that you can handle it, you can put up with it. In other words, if you can bear pain, it's like you can tolerate it to a certain extent. Maybe you can bear the pain of working out, for example, that when you go to the gym, you can put in extra reps because you've trained yourself and everything. So you push through that pain, or you almost start to even enjoy that pain. You can bear it, right? If you have a strong enough why, you can bear anyhow.
Or almost anyhow. Yeah.
So it's like when you first have that intrinsic motivation, you have like strong burning purpose, then the road to get there, whatever it is, you're going to find a way, right? Which I think really is using the difficulty. You're going to be able to use the difficulty because you have a deep burning purpose that pushes you to do so.
This is nice. I think this is one of those foundational mindsets that you'd need in order for you to actually use the difficulty, because you actually want to be successful with what you're doing there, and you have a reason to want that. So by just having that intrinsic motivation, you'll just find a way. You'll be resourceful with everything you're trying to achieve there, which now makes me think resourcefulness is a really important quality to cultivate here. What is that, to be resourceful?
To be resourceful means that we have different pronunciation of it. You said resourceful, which I think is some parts of the States say resourceful and other ones say resourceful. So that's interesting. If you're resourceful, it means that you're able to use your resources, meaning that you're able to figure out what are the things that you need. So maybe you do research, or you talk to someone, or you just experiment, you try different things, you be curious until you find a way to get past it. So that's resourcefulness, and it is a really good quality to have in those sorts of situations.
Just yesterday, we were talking on Slack, this tool for communication that we use at Real Life English. And we're talking about the importance of cultivating a player mindset in the idea of being a player, not a victim. Victim versus player. Do you remember that? And how do you think this relates to using the difficulty here?
So this is an idea that came from Claire Hughes. I don't know if she came up with it or if she's borrowing it from someone else, but both you and I listened to a podcast with her that was really tremendous that we can share in the show notes. What she means by it is someone who's a victim is things happen, and that person, their attitude towards things happening is, oh, there was nothing I could do, or it was the fault of someone else. It wasn't my fault.
I remember she was saying that children normally speak like this, like they're just a victim of the circumstances. So they'll say something, they'll arrive home and they forgot their coat at school. They'll say, the coat is at school. Or the toy is broken. But who broke it? It was them. But exactly. They just speak in this passive way, right?
And the player is the opposite, right? So the player takes radical responsibility, meaning that they always look for what was their role in this. So instead of blaming someone else, they take responsibility. Even if someone else had a part in it, they think about okay, I could have held that person more accountable. I could have had better communication with them. I could have seen if there was a certain part that they were being challenged with, and I could have helped them with it. Or I could have done it myself, whatever the case is. Or something came up, something didn't go as planned. It's I could have been better in my communication, or I could have renegotiated, asked for more time to finish it, or asked someone else if they could help with it, or so on. So it's really good to be a player and not a victim, because ultimately victims, it's you're just going to be stuck in life. This is a lot of times why people are stuck, right? Is because they're not taking responsibility for their role in it. We talk a lot about 7 habits, right, on this podcast, because it's something that both you and I are very passionate about. It's helped both of us a lot. And the first habit is be proactive. And kind of at the core of this is acting in your circle of influences versus acting in your circle of concern. So in your circle of concern is everything that you have no power over. You can't do anything about. In your circle of influence is the place where you have power. You can affect it. So in that same way, people who are successful are always looking for, when something happens, even if that thing is in their circle of concern, meaning that they can't do anything about it, what are the things that they can do in this situation? How can they use the difficulty to find a way that is going to lead them to even being, ultimately successful.
Mm-hmm.
One example I thought of was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know if you saw that Netflix documentary that came out last year.
I have not, but there is a lesson on Learning Street TV series, our YouTube channel, that I've seen the clip in that lesson, and it was just phenomenal. You guys can check it out, viewers, listener. We'll leave the link in the description. But Ethan.
Yeah, that would be a great place to get started. But he totally embodies this mindset of using the difficulty. He came from a very small town, from a poor family in Austria, right? And he got really into bodybuilding, which wasn't like something that was popular where he was from. So it was something that was actually difficult to do. He didn't have any advantages. He wasn't born with any advantages for practicing the sport. It's just something he became very passionate about and he pursued, even though everyone was telling him not to. And what he says is say no to the naysayers. Do you know this term naysayer?
Yeah, so the naysayers are the people who are trying to get you down. They are just denying what you're doing and saying that you're not going to be successful and all of that.
Exactly. So he had this throughout his life. He had it with his family, friends, and so on that said, why don't you practice a sport that's more popular in Austria? But he was really passionate about this and he kept pushing through. He persevered, right? And he became the best person in Europe first and then one of the best people in the world at the sport. And then from there, he's like, I want to get into acting. So he was already very successful at this thing, and he decided like he wanted to pull 180, meaning he wanted to completely change directions and become an actor. And again, it's people are like, are you crazy? Like you have this really crazily big body. Like no one's looking for that in Hollywood. You have this strange accent. Like no one's going to hire you to act in a film. In hindsight, right? It's like crazy to think like of a world without Arnold Schwarzenegger as the actor.
Mm-hmm. We think of the actor first, oftentimes. Right?
Yeah. Most people think of like Terminator. Or they think of any other film that he was in, right?
Or the governor
of
California. Even.
The governor. Yeah, exactly. So that's the other thing. But he had a lot of people telling him he'd never become an actor, and he decided like to buckle down, pull himself up by his bootstraps, which means that you find a way, right? You figure it out, as we were talking about earlier. And he just studied acting, for hours every single day. He obsessed over that. And then finally, like as you said, he decided to get into politics. And it's like, again, lots of naysayers, lots of people telling him, it makes no sense for you to get into politics. But he was passionate about it. He wanted to help the state that he lived in, and he became governor. So it's like he did all these different things, more than any one of those things. Any of us would be like immensely proud to have some level of mastery in, and he gained a very high level of mastery in all three of them, right? So I think that's, for me, is someone I would look to as a role model if you want to, and the documentary was just so entertaining. But it's a really great example of using the difficulty and not listening when people tell you you can't do it. Like I remember hearing him say, like, instead of saying, when people say you can't, you say you can. When people tell you it's impossible, you say it's possible.
It's fascinating story, and it reminds me of Gisele Bundchen, the famous model, the top model from Brazil, that somebody asked her once, like, what is your secret? How can you be so successful for so long, and what's your secret? And she said that, well, my secret is that if you ask me to clean this floor right here, right now, you're going to be actually able to eat off of it. Eat something off of it by the time I'm done. So she was basically saying that she will do her best. If she puts her mind to something, and whatever it is, that you will just see her doing her best or trying her best.
That's funny that it reminds me too of, I've heard from Will Smith, him say something very similar, that if someone tells him like it's race on a treadmill or something like this, one of two things are going to happen. Either he's going to win or he's going to die. Like there's no in between for him. There's no losing.
It's kind of extreme.
So you don't need to go take it that far, but I would definitely encourage you listening, watching, just think about what problems are you facing in English or otherwise in your life, and how can you use that problem to your advantage. So we would really love to, just any of you that can share any of your stories of how you've used the difficulty in the past, or a problem that you're facing right now, and maybe something that you're going to try after listening to this to overcome that, to improve that, then let us know down in the comments below. If you are enjoying these lessons, a free way for you to support us so we can keep bringing you more of them is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else where you're listening. Or if you are watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and the bell down below. This really helps to let YouTube know that you are enjoying these lessons so it can let more people know about them, which helps us to grow and help even more English learners. And remember that no matter what divides us, that which unites us is far greater. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So our purpose here at Real Life English is to create a world beyond borders. Now, this doesn't mean a world without borders. It means that no matter our differences, so race, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, or political beliefs, no matter what divides us, that which unites us is far greater. It's also true what Wittgenstein said, that the limits of your language are the limits of your world.